I would note, by the way, the Majority Leader had extended commentary about two businessmen, the Koch brothers, who I'm beginning to think are a character almost out of Dr. Seuss in the Majority Leader's mind. They are the Grinch who stole Christmas in his telling. And I would note he focuses on the IRS rules, not focusing on the abuse of power by the IRS that the Treasury Inspector General chronicled, but instead on the need for a vote to regulate the IRS's abuse of power. Let me just say very simply, the House bill on Ukraine doesn't mention the IRS at all. Doesn't mention C4s at all. That issue is not covered. So when the Majority Leader stood on the floor of this Senate and said, this is all because of the nefarious Koch brothers, set aside the impropriety of the Majority Leader of the United States Senate picking two private citizens, individuals who are engaged in political speech, standing up for what they believe, and the Majority Leader using his position of political power to lambaste them, to target them. Interestingly enough, the Majority Leader does not seem to have a problem with a California billionaire who's publicly pledged to put $100 million behind Democrats to press them to pass climate change legislation that would cost millions of jobs across this country, from blue-collar workers, from hardworking Americans. That billionaire, in the Majority Leader's view, is perfectly fine to spend $100 million in the election, but the Koch brothers, because the two of them have stood up and expressed their views, are subject to vilification and personal attack from the Majority Leader. Madam President, the Senate rules allow a member of this body, if his or her integrity is impugned, to raise an objection. Let me ask you something, Madam President. What Senate rule allows a private citizen to raise an objection when his integrity is impugned by the Majority Leader? Those two brothers are not members of this body, so they can have their reputation dragged through the mud. And yet they are denied a point of personal privilege to come and defend themselves. That is not the job of the United States Senate, to vilify private citizens. And I would note that the provision he's talking about is not in the House bill, which means when the senator from Wyoming stood up and asked for consent to pass the House bill, if the Majority Leader had simply refrained from objecting, we would have passed aid to Ukraine tonight. It's nothing to do with the Koch brothers, nothing to do with the IRS. That's not in the House bill.